So I'm gonna teach you how to cube up your bread. This is actually fresh sourdough, so it's really easy to do this with day-old sourdough because the crust is just a little bit easier to cut through. But I'm gonna show you an easier way to do it if you happen to make your sourdough fresh for your Thanksgiving dinner and you need to cube it up. So this one was fresh out of the oven this morning. So what I like to do is I like to cut it in half and then I just face them down on the ground. And I like to use a different knife. You can use a bread knife. This is just an old Miracle blade. It's quite sharp. It works really well. But sometimes it's easier to use like a steak knife or like a big cutting knife to slice through. So you can do that, or you can use but I find with the teeth, you can kind of see how it's like gnawing through. With fresh sourdough, it can be really tricky to cut right through in slices like that when it's so fresh. So I like to use a really, really sharp slicing knife. So we're just gonna cut it like this. So this is actually even a lot easier to do if you have sourdough bread that you froze. So for future reference, for Thanksgiving or Christmas or anything like that, make your sourdough ahead of time, put it in the freezer, take it out, thaw it out, and then slice it up for your stuffing. So this is actually still like warm out of the oven. So it's about the hardest it could be to slice up, but using this nice sharp knife to get through it, that is what you want to try to do. So you can cut the cubes as small or as big as you'd like. I like about that size. That works really nicely. And we're just gonna go through and we're just gonna slice up all of the sourdough bread and get it ready for the oven. So because we are gonna be baking this in the oven with chicken broth and all this other good stuff, we don't want to put the bread in just like this because it would get quite soggy. So we are gonna dry it out as much as we possibly can. So we're gonna add it onto a baking sheet. This is just the biggest one that I have that will fit most of the bread. And we're gonna bake it in the oven again. So we're gonna bake it in there for like 20 minutes or so at 350. And basically what that's gonna do is it's just gonna almost toast it. We're gonna toast these all up, and then when we add them with our mixture to go back into the oven, it's not gonna get quite as soggy because it's going to soak up more of that liquid from being toasted. Okay, so we're gonna stick those in the oven at 350, and then we will mix up the mixture that's gonna go on top of them. So we're just gonna start with the mixture that's gonna go on top of your bread. So we're gonna put half of your butter into your frying pan, and we're gonna slice up our onion. So this is a kind of a fun trick on slicing up your onion. If you need it in like little tiny chunks. So you're gonna cut it in strips, you're gonna keep that knob on the top, and then you're gonna cut it the other way. So you can do kind of a medium onion or a large onion, whatever you want. And then we're gonna flip it to the side and we're just gonna slice it off. And you're gonna have your little pieces of your onion. You can go on the side. And you're just gonna slice right into the knob that you're keeping on the top there. Perfectly. Okay, so those little pieces out. So that's gonna go in, and then we're going to do our garlic. So a friend of mine who grew up in Sardinia, which is in Italy, told me that you should never use a garlic press because it actually makes your garlic a lot more potent, and that's why people in America have issues with like eating a lot of garlic. So if you do it with a knife, it keeps all of the good stuff kind of like inside the garlic. That's kind of how she explained it to me. And then we're going to slice it up. So there's a little part on the end there that we don't want. And then we're just gonna slice it up like that. Chop. And then you don't lose all that good stuff, and it's not near as potent when you put it in your recipe. Okay, so that's gonna go into your pan. And we're going to put our onions in our pan, and we're gonna cook these down until they're nice and soft and translucent, and then we're gonna add the rest of the ingredients. So all of our spices and our broth and all that. So we put the extra butter in. So the other half of the butter is gonna go in. We're gonna add our spices. So we have sage and savory. In Nova Scotia, we have what's called summer savory, and it's really good. But I couldn't find it at the grocery store, so I just got this. So it's just a savory. And then if you grow sage in your garden, then you can just chop up like 8 to 10 leaves, but otherwise it's about 1 to 2 tablespoons per spice, and we're just gonna cook that around, and then we're gonna add in our chicken broth. So we're gonna dump in our chicken broth. This is just defrosted broth that I had in the freezer from chicken that we had roasted previously, but you can just buy it at the store. It's about 2.5 to 3 cups of chicken broth. And then we're gonna let that come to a boil and simmer for a little bit longer. And then over here, we have our walnuts. So we have about 3/4 cup of chopped walnuts, and we're gonna turn this on a medium heat and let them toast. This is what really makes the dish so amazing. So you wanna make sure that you do it. But this doesn't take very long to do. So you wanna stand right over top. It's just a dry cast iron pan, and we're gonna let that kind of heat up, and you're going to be able to start to smell the walnuts toasting. And once they're finished, once they start to smell fragrant, that means that they're done. So you want to take them off of the burner, and you just want them a little bit toasted so that we can add them into our mixture. So now that we have all of our parts to the recipe, so we have our toasted bread, we have our mixture, our onion mixture, we have our toasted walnuts. Everything's very hot, but we're going to add all the bread to this bowl. And then about half of the walnuts. So we're only gonna use half of the walnuts because we wanna put the rest on top. So a couple handfuls, and then we're gonna take our onion mixture and we're gonna pour it over top of all of it. So it's still pretty hot. And basically, you just wanna stir it around in there until all the bread is, or all the liquid is kind of saturated by the bread. And it won't be perfect, but as it cooks, it will continue to saturate. But you can already tell there's not a lot of liquid left at the bottom. The onions and the walnuts are evenly distributed. So we're gonna put this into our casserole dish. So I just have a cast iron dish here. Move everything. We're gonna take this whole mixture and pour it into our casserole dish. And I like it when the onions and the walnuts kind of come last, because then they kind of sit on the top, and that's when it's the best. This is really a lot like stovetop, to be honest. My daughter always loved stovetop. I do not like stovetop because of the ingredients in it, and so this is like such a great compromise. And then we're just gonna sprinkle the nuts on the top like that. And then we're just gonna take a little bit of salt and pepper, sprinkle it over top. And you can also add a little bit of extra sage on top of this as well. I might sprinkle a little bit more sage, or sprinkle some summer savory, kind of if you're feeling like it needs a little more. You can always taste it at this point too. So just take a little piece. If it tastes kind of how you want it to, then you can pop it in the oven, or you can add more spices to the top and mix it around a little bit. So I'm happy with this. I'm gonna put this in the oven and I'll show you what it comes out as. So here she is, all baked. Turn up so you can see. So if you are looking for a replacement for your stovetop stuffing for Thanksgiving, this is definitely it. Like, you could sit and eat this whole thing, and it's so good and delicious and savory, and everybody loves it. So there you go. Enjoy.